Hello, my name is Aaron Ragasa, and this is going to be a discussion on the film genre of the melodrama. In this discussion, I'll be talking about the films Mildred Pierce and Ordinary People, which were directed respectively by Michael Curtiz and Robert Redford. Certain generic codes of film help define an audience's understanding of specific works and placing them into different types of film. For example, in the melodrama, we would expect characters to exhibit ways of expressing emotionality in a not so realist approach, but more of an expressive one, a musical one, hence the name melodrama. These two melodramas are from two very different moments of cinematic history, but these films are still melodramas, and in that identification with that generic bucket, both Redford and Curtiz in these adaptations of different novels draw upon audience expectations to provide both a language for the spectator to understand the film's expression, but also to directly subvert those expectations to provide a more impactful thematic viewpoint after the film has concluded. Through kinda non-linear narrative storytelling, through the usage of an analepsis, their general narrative structure, and the casting of certain actors as certain characters, so much of what leads our characters into these melodic displays of emotion is elaborated by subjective analepsis breaks in the film's present diegesis. The vast majority of what occurs on screen in Mildred Pierce unfolds in the police testimony of Joan Crawford's Mildred Berrigan. So now the task at hand is to understand what inside Mildred Berrigan, Mildred Pierce, through her prior work, life, and actions, through her prior pain, placed her name in the lips of Monty right before his death. If Mildred was the one who pulled the trigger, what adversarial conditions led her to pulling it? By contrast, Redford's Ordinary People places the inciting incident of the film's general conflict within that subjective analepsis, Conrad Jarrett's visceral recollections of his brother's drowning at sea. This initially brief flash of trauma and anguish is seemingly what pushed Conrad to trying to kill himself, and also the gulf in emotional relatability for both between him and his parents, him and others, and just the family in general. However, it is not just Mildred's struggle against the patriarchal private and public which leads to the killing of Monty, or is it the solitary moment of trauma which caused the paralyzed emotionality of the Jarrett family? But these are only elements of what is revealed to be the core condition of the characters at the ends of the film. In Mildred Pierce, it is then not why would Mildred kill Monty, but how has Mildred's nearly suicidal devotion to her children led to the death of Monty? David Bordwell writes, "At the end of the first flashback, Mildred is portrayed as being completely in love with Monty. The task of the next long flashback is to show how she could become capable of murdering him. Killing Monty becomes Mildred's means to the goal of protecting her daughter, a goal she has held throughout her whole life. Mildred remains a self-sacrificing mother to the end, but this resolution is invoked only to be dispelled."
Monty, listen to me. You told me over and over again that you loved me.
Did I? Then I must have been drinking.
Monty, listen to me.
Look, you don't really think I could be in love with a rotten little tramp like you, do you?
On the other hand, Ordinary People becomes not an exploration of how trauma can transform a group of individuals' ability to relate to others, but how a single traumatic event can illuminate and accelerate the ongoing norms which cast the Jarrett family further apart. The inciting incident, that of the death of the oldest Jarrett son, Buck, is recalled subjectively throughout the film and is constantly recontextualized as Conrad undergoes his healing process through his sessions with Dr. Berger.
Bucky, I didn't mean it. Bucky, I didn't mean it. Bucky!
I know that. It wasn't your fault.
But it was. You said get the cell down, and I couldn't. It jammed, and then the halyard jammed, and I couldn't. The halyard jammed, and then you're sitting, you're screwing around until it's too late to do anything, and I'm supposed to take care of it. I'm supposed to take care of it.
And that wasn't fair, was it?
No! And then you say, hang on, and then you let go. Why'd you let go?
Because I got tired.
Yeah? Well, screw you, you jerk!
These flashbacks themselves are not illuminating in content, but in their existence. Because this one event is so easily identifiable as a core source of trauma for the family, the expectation becomes that a direct reckoning with those events would be the solution to Conrad's depression and the family's disconnection. But just as the other flashbacks in the film, they are only a part of the larger whole of the emotional paralysis of the Jarrett household. And additionally, in the way these films end, they contradict certain generic expectations that the audience may have for a melodrama. Mildred Pierce is a film that also lies within the subgenre or subclassification of the maternal melodrama, where it is expected that the mother, the protagonist, would give up something and give up herself in order to give them a better future. However, in this film, yes, throughout the whole film, Mildred's mission does stay aligned with that goal. Instead, it is Vita who must be sacrificed in order for Mildred to continue her life, however that may turn out. And the expectation from ordinary people, at least my expectation, was for both Conrad, but also both his parents, to come to some sort of thematic resolution at the end, coming together as a family, realizing what happened to them and where they can take it from here. But for Conrad's parents, ironically, the end is still the beginning for their journeys. And the seemingly disappointing ending is at the fault of narrative expectations, which sort of amplify the goal of demonstrating how different people, different ordinary people, move on from these traumatic events, but also understand how to understand each other after years of playing into the expectation of a traditional family. In the casting of these films, narrative expectations are also laid out in a sort of metatextual way. They're sort of seen through the spectator's understanding of the actors playing these characters. It is most vividly represented in both the matriarchs of the film, in Mildred Pierce, the aforementioned Mildred, but also in Ordinary People with Beth, played by Mary Tyler Moore. In her stardom previous to Mildred Pierce and during her time at MGM, Joan Crawford, the actress, and her characters were inseparable from Joan Crawford, the individual. And through a very specific curation of wardrobe, the iconographic idea of Joan Crawford was born. Crawford's padded shoulders had helped to consolidate her image as a fiercely ambitious, hard-working star, a distinctive look for the actress that would prevent her from disappearing into roles that her fans would recognize her from one film to another and not be disappointed. In masculinizing her, Crawford's iconographic shoulder pads provided an appropriate visual correlative to the independent woman character she so frequently played. Where Curtis's film departed from the Crawford formula was in its treatment of its independent self-made heroine. Crawford's earlier characters aspired to a higher social class, which they usually achieved through good grooming, elegant manners, and proper dress. Mildred's aspirations emerged as a transgression of her identity as a wife and a mother. Curtis's film marks Mildred's rise to success by having Crawford resume her trademark look, but rather than signifying an alluring combination of masculine and feminine attributes, as it had in her earlier films, Crawford's padded shoulders in this film from 1945 register visually the non-normativity of Mildred's gender and sexual identities. As the film progresses and more information is revealed, the generalized characterization is again subverted, and a more nuanced interpretation of the motivations of the characters is revealed from those broad strokes, or broad shoulders, because of the shoulder pads. Mary Tyler Moore's casting in Ordinary People is also really fascinating and illuminating. As a stalwart of American TV, there's a certain expectation as to what a Mary Tyler Moore character is. The narrative trajectory of the Mary Tyler Moore Show textually repositions Mary, the single, professionally minded, independent woman, into romantic or familial categories, so that she emerges as a self-sacrificing, nutrient figure of true womanhood. Mary Tyler Moore condensed one dominant institution, the family, with another, the workplace.
I know I'm not perfect. And if I can't go around hugging everybody all the time the way you do, then
I'm not asking you to be perfect. You're missing the point.
I don't want to see any doctors or counselors. I'm me. This is my family. And if we have problems, then we will solve those problems in the privacy of our own home, not by running to some kind of specialist every time something goes wrong.
Are you folks ready to order?
So to see Mary Tyler Moore in a character like Beth, an individual who finds so much value and identification in her role as a matriarch in an outwardly stable family, it subverts our expectations for like how we want to see or how we have known to see Mary Tyler Moore. And through those expectations of what a Mary Tyler Moore character is, we're left waiting and waiting. And there's that word again, expectations. Expectations. A core reason of why genres are utilized is to tap into these expectations. And maybe that's the reason for the longevity of the genre of the melodrama. Though it has been panned critically over the years, it still remains one of the core genres of fiction, from the films of the 40s, 50s, and 60s all the way to the 1980 when Ordinary People was released, and to this day with television and with film like If I Had Legs I'd Kick You or The Florida Project. So it is not the adhesion to these rules which constitutes a film's belonging to a genre, but it's those moments where they acknowledge these rules and do something with it to tell the story. Because genre at the end of the day is language, and language is malleable and contextual, and it depends from person to person. So we do have these specific rules of how things are said, but it is how we read them which really shapes how they affect us. Thank you.